Dobar dan. Sorry we're a little late today. Technical issues, you know. TalkCast PDX on the web, talkcastpdx.com. It's Tuesday, April 5th, 2022. Name of the show is The Bogdanich Perspective, and I'm your host, Paul Bogdanich, and welcome. It's episode number 55, and I'm going to call it All Lies. Because everything I read in the press is all lies. I'm a member of TalkCast PDX, broadcast on their network. They have lifestyle shows, cooking shows, travel shows, etc., etc. And so I'm subject to the platform provider's content rules, which is a polite way of saying I'm censored. Certain things you can't talk about, but we'll continue on and avoid those touchy little subjects. Literally, I read, I scan the newspapers, I look at the internet feeds, I look at, off-site reporting, blogs, this, that, everything else, and pretty much everything I'm seeing either is a lie by omission or a lie in fact. Before we get into that, I want to do something a little more uplifting. Justin, if you could please put up graph number 1. We're going to go back to our architectural theme. Last week we did a bridge over the Dardanelles. And this week we're going to do the Museum of the Future. And it's in Dubai. And there's a picture of it. When I brought it into the office here, the guys that reviewed it said it kind of looks like a genie's lamp. And I think that that's, almost correct. But look at that. The top 2 shots are just the building in perspective. It's in Dubai. It was built by the prince. It's his building. He's very proud of it. He and his wife, did the construction. The 2 inside pictures there, the one is up on the top, the 7th floor, and shows, what the passageways and, that kind of thing looks like. What would be on the bottom right there, and the whole thing is full of exhibits like this, but that is called the HEAL Institute, HEAL Institute, and this is on the bottom right. And what that is each one of those little points has different species from the Amazon rainforest in it. And you can mingle them and move them and see how the ecosystem works and all the rest of that, kind of stuff. It's a trippy 3D museum. Construction cost and exhibit cost well over $1 billion. And it's just a nice structure. And again, as with the bridge in Turkey, it's not here. Not in any European country. We spent trillions on, these pandemic lockdowns, this, that, everything else, $700 billion a year for defense. And when was the last time, we built a structure like that? You can take that down. So, but there are people in the world that are still doing some interesting things. They're just not here. Anyway, so wanted to talk about, back to the all lies deal. It's just everywhere. I mean, the Wall Street Journal today, I don't know if you can see this, but the headline here says, leaders demand war crime probe, and I read the article, suffered through it. And, it's, and there's war crimes on both sides. But that's not what's interesting. What's interesting is the character of the people that are calling for quote unquote war crimes. Other than the Nuremberg trials after the Second World War, who are the only people that have been tried for war crimes? The 3 highest profile were from the Yugoslavian Civil War in the 90s. The president of the then Yugoslavia, Slobodan Milosevic, and the regional leader of what's now Bosnia-Herzegovina, a guy by the name of Radovan Karadzic, and then the general who was in charge of the operation called Milo Milankovic, Vic, I think, in Serbian. But those are the only people that have been prosecuted under quote-unquote war crimes. It's under an international treaty called the International Criminal Court. The U.S., Israel, and certain of our other allies are not signatories to the treaty. Okay. When we went to invade Iraq in 2003, the court made some noise about monitoring our activity in Iraq. And in 2002, August 3rd, 2002, the same leaders that are in Congress today, Lindsey Graham, Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden at the time, Hillary Clinton at the time, uh, um, Chuck Schumer, Grassley, just probably 40 members of the Senate, 30 members of the Senate, same people. Okay. But August 3rd, 2002, in response to the noise that was being made by the International Criminal Court before we went into Iraq, the Congress passed, U.S. Congress, House and Senate, passed a law called the Hague Invasion Act. Okay. And it's still on the books. And what it says is if the International Criminal Court arrests an American for war crimes or any of our allies for war crimes, that the president has the standing authority to send military forces to invade the ICC, the International Criminal Court, and return them to our custody. And that was heretofore our opinion of the International Criminal Court, which is why the court never addressed, small little things. What do they call it? A rendition. Our torture chambers and centers in Turkey and elsewhere. Abu Ghraib, remember that? You're not supposed to remember that. You're only supposed to concentrate on the Russians and Ukrainians. But I mean, the hypocrisy and the it's blinding. It's phenomenal. When you listen to the Russians, that's their opinion as well. New York Times ran an article, I thought it was yesterday, but the headline of the article is "Talking to Relatives in Russia, Ukrainians hear, what war?" As if Russians don't know that there's a war going on. And if you listen to the Russian side, those two guys that Russians with attitude, they address that point. And the thing that stuns them is the hypocrisy. What worries them about their system is that their leaders are corrupt. They tell them one thing, and that at the last minute they always make a negotiation and betray them. Right? That's what their concern is. But they look at Western press and Western journalism, and they're just absolutely stunned by the hypocrisy, and they consider it demeaning. One of them said, "What do they think? We're stupid?" That's their opinion. There's a guy who's a security analyst, and I looked at his blog this morning just for the hell of it, and he said, "As this stands in Ukraine, I believe there is a far greater likelihood that Zelensky will be arrested and charged as a war criminal than Putin. The direct evidence of Ukrainian war crimes, complete with proof of intent, is overwhelming, and yet Western media ignores it." On your social media, they're posting some very bloody pictures of Ukrainian forces executing Russian soldiers and civilians in Mariupol down there. Having been in the infantry, that's just what dead people look like. I mean, it's not, the picture that they put in the Wall Street Journal of this supposed atrocity, 2 people killed and they're laying in a courtyard of a home. There's no blood. There's no giant river of blood running out of the body. Guys, humans are soft. They're easily injured, but they're hard to kill. You have to apply a lot of force. And when you do, it's very messy. But no evidence of that. We wouldn't want to show that. And then you also have to remember that, what is this, 2 people? And then remember our numbers, more than 500,000 in Iraq. Some say close to 1 million. 350,000 in Syria, 400,000 in Libya, countless in Yemen if you include starvation and stuff, but no pictures. And it just, all we're good at is propaganda. We're not good at anything else, but we're good at propaganda. And so we're going with what we're good at. I just, the Hague Invasion Act, I mean, that's pretty amazing. But back to things that matter, the food shortages. Everybody, apparently, they're getting their private briefings, right? They're not telling us, don't speak in front of the children. But they're looking at 500,000 or more direct starvation this summer in North Africa, Algeria, Egypt, etc. And starting to worry people. Thankfully, I guess they're not making a deal of it. With when Biden said, Biden's he's like George Bush, or George W. Bush. He only knows what they tell him. He doesn't know anything other than that. And what they told him that he reiterated when he was over there in Poland with regards to food shortages, yes, we did talk about food shortages, and it's going to be real. The price of these sanctions is not just imposed on Russia. It's imposed on an awful lot of countries. In other words, they told him that by, that it's going to cause mass starvation in the north of Africa. All right, so quietly, our sanctions, if you will. Washington, D.C. has removed sanctions on Russian agricultural products, including fertilizers. So, to get our 1,000,000 tons of nitric acid, I don't know if you remember that discussion. So they very quietly removed the sanctions on agricultural products. That was done by the Office of Foreign Asset Controls under the U.S. Treasury. And they did that. Putin, in announcing the controls, his speech goes, "Today I have signed an executive order that establishes the rules for trade in Russian commodities with so-called unfriendly states. We offer counterparties from such countries a clear and transparent mechanism to purchase Russian resources. They must open ruble accounts in Russian banks. It is from these accounts that payment will be made for resources delivered at starting April 1st. If such payments are not made, we will consider it a failure to fulfill." These accounts in Russian banks are tied to the prices of commodities: gold, silver, copper, palladium, nickel, stuff like that. For the purposes of oil, I think they tied it to gold. I think it's 5,000 rubles an ounce or something of that nature. But they're forcing countries to pay with hard currency based on resources. Some countries are looking for ways to comply. Other countries are arguing. Love or hate them, the one thing that's nice about the Russians is they tell you exactly what they're thinking and exactly what they're going to do. They don't lie, they don't bluff. And Kremlin spokesman, guy by the name of Dmitry Peskov. So this is the Russian equivalent of Jan Pesky, right? Okay. But he just says, when the Europeans sober up from the American bourbon a little bit, and when they finally realize that we should take care of the fate of our continent, Europe, maybe even Eurasia, then it will happen. That's not a matter for the nearest future, but the time will come for a reassessment of our relations. And that's, they tell you exactly what they're doing, which is what I tried to convey last week: weaken the power of the king by dealing, they view it as a neo-feudal system, and they want to start dealing directly with the duchies and principalities as opposed to the king. And they don't want to trade in the king's money. And that's, their plan. They're very open about it, like I say. The Germans are causing a lot of problems. Gazprom Germany, Germania, I think they call it Gazprom Germania, cut ties with the Russian parent Gazprom. So the state of Germany is now administering those assets in Germany. Germany gets about 40% of its gas and 35 or 40% of its oil from Russia, and they have to start paying in rubles, and it's becoming a problem. In Germany, their largest retailers, the equivalent in the United States would be your large grocery chains, Safeway, Costco, Walmart, uh, other discount clubs under various names operating across the country. But Germany's a small country by comparison to America. So their firms are called Adley, Lidl, and Edeka or Rui. There's four of them, in other words. But they got together and they coordinated rising prices on 400 different products by 30%. And they all did it on the same day, which was yesterday. So you go into a grocery store on Sunday, any of their major retailers. You go into a grocery store on Sunday, the price is $1. You go into the same grocery store for the same product on Monday, and the price is $1.30. So, that's they've already started rationing items that customers believe will run out, including cooking oils, flour, and other basic necessities. When asked for comment, industry experts don't expect shortages because prices are expected to rise so high that far fewer people will be able to afford the products. What they say. If you look at Europe more broadly than just Germany, Germany's inflation for the quarter last month was 7.6%. It's going to be more this quarter with a 30% price rise on staples. But Europe more broadly, the inflation rate last quarter was 7.5% instead of 7.6. The 19 countries in the continental Eurozone, fifth straight month that inflation in the Eurozone has set a record, bringing it to the highest level since record keeping on their currency, the euro, was introduced in 1997. So this is their first real binge with inflation. Back to the power of the king. The Japanese, very close to Russia, eastern part of Russia, but that's where the oil fields are. So Japan is within 600 nautical miles of where they actually pump the oil and get the gas. And Japan and South Korea, for that matter, get a lot of their resources from there because it's close and it's efficiently cheap. But the Japanese, for their part, the Bank of Japan, and this is all very quiet, we don't report this, decided that it cannot go along with our sanctions and seize Russian foreign reserves, as the country's current laws do not allow it to do so. And this is according to the Japanese finance minister, Senjuki Suzuki, I guess, something like that. The president of Japan said Japan has no intention of withdrawing from its oil and natural gas projects in Russia's Far East. Economy minister something told reporters on Friday. Japan has stakes in both oil and gas projects and has secured long-term supplies. The projects provide our country with energy at below market prices, and soaring energy costs are making the projects even more important. So in other words, the Japanese are used to dealing with us, so they don't make a big fuss about it. Our press ignores it, but they basically told us your sanctions are unworkable, and we will continue to do business directly with the Russians. World Trade Organization has cut global trade growth, the forecast for 2022, from 5% to 2.5%, citing, quote, the impact of the war and related policies. Russia and Ukraine only make up about 2.5% of global merchandise exports, but they're almost 40% of grain exports. Again, back to starvation in North Africa. You have a bunch of senators, American senators, led by not Tom Cotton, but the other one. What's his name? From Texas. Anyway, led by him, and they want to, they're pushing to, there's a law in the agriculture department that the federal government remunerates farmers to leave fields in a fallow condition, the ancient production method. 1/3 of your ground lays fallow, 1/3 is for grazing animals, and then you farm the other third and you rotate them. And that keeps the soil healthy. And so, to promote that practice in the United States, the Department of Agriculture pays the farmers for the fields that lies fallow, and in respect to the payments, they're not allowed to plant on them. And they want a temporary suspension of that rule for this year so that those fields can be planted, back to the ditching of the fertilizer sanctions. So some people are actually trying to prevent the king's nonsense from starving 1 million people in North Africa. Whether they succeed or not is questionable. What are we doing about it all? Throwing money at defense contractors. That's our response. That's our political system's response. Oh boy, those Russian missile ships can hit us, so let's give Raytheon Missiles and Defense Division $3.2 billion for a SPY-6 radar. That way we'll at least be able to see the missile before it hits us. But that's our response, to throw more money at the defense complex. Anyway, very difficult. The Russians abandoned Kiev, or all the surrounding of Kiev, and we make a big deal. They vastly reduced troops. Nobody knows what they think what they're doing. The most intelligent thinking is that they're going to split Ukraine into the pre-1930 division, which is Novoross and Petros. I talked about that. So they'll take the southern portion of Ukraine and turn it into Novorossiya, which is what it was historically. Russian speaking. It's still the same today. It's just within the British drawn, or Soviet drawn Ukrainian borders. If you read the books on the failure of the Portuguese Empire and the Spanish Empire and the French Empire and the limited German Empire and then the English and so on, the guys always go, and even I can't remember the American Treatise on Imperialisms. I can't remember the guy's name, but if you read all those, which I have, they spend chapters in those books trying to describe how out of touch, nonsensical, illogical, stupid the leaders behave at the point of a collapse of these empires, and they try and enforce the point, and then they list all the side effects and the cascade of events and all the rest of this stuff, also, but they all spend chapters trying to impress upon the reader how utterly effete and incompetent the leadership was at these times, and I now have an understanding for what they were trying to convey. It was always hard reading the written words to believe that anybody would be that stupid, but apparently so. And so what you would have to conclude, if you thought about this fairly, is that our political system as currently constituted is incapable of dealing with major problems, no matter what it is. Climate change, food shortages, war. They just, living standards, cost of housing, anything. They can't do it. We're suffering a failure of our political system. I would argue that that's mostly from leaving the same leaders in there for 20, 30 years in a row, but that's just me. Anyway, on to a brief look at the markets. Justin, if you could please put up graph number 2. This is just our graph. I extended it to June 30th because it's now April 5th. It used to end on March 31st, but I put it out another quarter. And you can just see that the last high, January 3rd, 47.97, Last low was March 8th, 41.71. And yesterday, as of yesterday, April 4th, it closed at 45.83, and that's up 9.88%, so 9.9%, so call it 1% from the interim low set on March 8th, or 10%, excuse me, not 1%. So it's up 10% off the bottom that it set on March 8th. You can take that down. It depends what you think will be the effect. How quickly will people stop using the king's money? The Indians, the Chinese, the South Americans, the Saudis are a big deal. Well, the Arabian Peninsula, where our building came from. But United Arab Emirates, Dubai, Qatar, Kuwait, to a lesser extent, Iraq, and then the major player is Saudi Arabia. But if they start to trade with us in dollars and then with them in their currencies like that, and China does the same thing, then, the Japan have already broke, Japan and South Korea, because of their geographical location, at least on energy supplies, have already broken ranks, right? India is a big player, but to the extent that the dollar is no longer, the dollar is no longer used as the international currency, that market's going to go down. Like I said, Ukraine is currently a mud patch. We have until June before the ground firms up. Invasions of Russia always go in June because Ukraine and Belarus are waist-deep mud this time of year. No open field maneuver is possible. So you have until June, with this back and forth and all the lies and all the rest of this stuff. But in June, the Russians have to defecate or get off the pot, as they say. I said, I predicted that there would be a rally. Is this the end of it? Is this a good place? But I just, the structural problems are too large. The only thing we're good at is propaganda. Everything you read, everything you see. The first time they'll change the narrative is after we've already failed, and there's no way to ignore it. So they're going to keep lying and lying and lying and lying and lying everything. A whole article. Leaders demand war crime probe. Nowhere in there did they even mention that we're not a signatory to the ICC, nor did they mention the Hague Invasion Act, which is even worse. No mention, and so we have standing somehow, just because of who we are, to do that. Anyway, go over the markets very briefly. Last week, the market was flat. It only went up 2.8 points. You should have made $62. If you were in our top 30 cap weighted, you would have made $200. If you were in our top 30 stocks equal weighted, you would have lost $15. But if you were in our top 3 every sector, which is broader, you would have made over $300. 54 stocks that we tracked, 28 up, 26 down. Tesla was the largest gainer, 7.3%. Elon Musk is a hell of a stock promoter. I don't know whether he believes what he says. A good promoter never believes his own bullshit. Is the old saying. I'm unsure about him. He makes me nervous. Anyway, 2 real estate concerns were up over 6.5%, Crown Castle and American Tower. And then you had Adobe up 6.2%. And then below them, up more than 4, but less than 6, you had the other real estate concern, Prologis. And then Walmart and Southern Energy and MasterCard, for some reason, went up 4.3%. And then Sherwin-Williams was up 4% as the sanctions loosen. And they look like they can get their base chemicals for the paint, right? Very quietly, we impose all these tough sanctions. Then we look and we go, oh, we can't do that. And, so we very quietly repeal them. But that's showing up in the price of these stocks. Stocks that went up more than 2 but less than 4: Costco, Philip Morris, Duke Energy, Thermo Fisher, PayPal, Visa, Coca-Cola, and NextEra Energy, which is a solar concern. Stocks that were up but less than 2%: Microsoft at 1.9%, Verizon Communications 1.6%, Facebook 1.4%, Cisco 1.3%. Then you have Lynn and Comcast and Air Products, Boeing Aircraft, Kinder Morgan, Johnson Johnson, and AT&T, all up but less than 1%. And down in between 0 and 2%, you have United Health, Netflix, Nike, Apple, Broadcom, Abbott Laboratories, 3M, Amazon, Honeywell, and then Google is the first company down more than 1%, down 1.1%. Disney down 1.54%. There are some graphics going all over the internet about a gift card packaging that Disney put out that is disgustingly pornographic. It really is. I don't know if you've seen it, but it's just awful. And parents are upset. They're trying to blame it on the state of Florida and DeSantis, but I mean, they have a problem over there. And in looking through the news, I see these things and I see professors and stuff, and they try and rationalize how it's somehow appropriate to discuss matters with a direct or oblique sexual nature with a human being who might still believe in Santa Claus. That's these people. I personally consider them disgusting. I want them kept away from the children, but that's just me. I'm not very intellectual when it comes to stuff like that. Anyway, down more than 2%, but less than 4%. Pfizer down 3%. ExxonMobil down 2.4% as we loosen sanctions. Home Depot down 2.8%. Nobody's got money to buy things. Chevron down 3%. Nvidia down 3.6% just because it's colossally overpriced. Target down 3.7%, again, buying things. Procter & Gamble, down almost 4%, 3.8%, because people are going to buy less because of the cost increases. UPS, fewer packages, down 4.4%, 4%. JP Morgan down 4.6%, principally because Jamie Dimon, the chairman of JP Morgan, came out and said these sanctions are really stupid and they're going to hurt the economy very badly and probably push us into recession. And this is the chairman and CEO of JP Morgan Bank. And so for putting out a statement like that and giving an interview on the same topic, he had to be punished. So his stock is down 4.7%. Lowe's, same deal, down 4.9%. And then in stocks that fell more than 5%, ConocoPhillips fell 6.4%, Bank America Corporation 6.5%, and Intel 7.2%. And that's about it. Go back to graph 2, if you would. The only question should be is this the end of the relief rally or close to it? In other words, how greedy are you? It's up 10%, 9.88, so 9.9, call it 10% from its interim low on March 8th. I mean, is that good enough, or are you going to wait to get for a new high? But as these... we're going to go into recession. Well, if you believe Jamie Dimon, we're going to go into recession. You can take that down. We're going to go into recession in the third quarter. So, do you want to be holding stocks? I wouldn't recommend bonds right now either. because of the Fed and their interest rates. So you have to go to cash, and that's kind of a problem. But that would be my advice. Also, Gordon, I have an assistant that does these, hunts down these news stories, in particular these, all the nice stories that I mentioned. My buddy Way, Gordon found that, the building in Dubai, the bridge in Turkey, all that. Good researcher. If you have any use for research, specializes in photographic stuff, particularly photographic art from inception to, call it, mid-modern. Very good researcher. Anyway, if you have a need for anything like that, please get a hold of me, paul@stockbetor.com. It's an email, paul@stockbetor, BETTOR.com. And that's it for today. Been the Bogdanich Perspective. Thanks for joining. Do Viđenja. Let's see how stupid our leaders really are. Let's see if what those books are trying to convey, how that looks in person. Do Viđenja. That means goodbye. See you next week.